Alright guys, back for assignment 3. This week talking about how the PC revitalized video gaming. Talking about Shigeru Miyamoto, how he brought video game consoles back to America. And explained, talking about Sony PlayStation and 16-bit wars between Sega and Nintendo. Talking about PC stuff revitalizing video gaming. We need to go back to stuff like the Atari 400. Some of the first PC chips were kind of designed in that same era. It was really designed to be child-proof, meant to be used by the whole family, including children. The fact that it could be used, or that it used direct ports of arcade games, that would simply be inserted into the unit, had a no-fuss startup, was kind of amazing things for its time. That was the first kind of cart-based stuff we used to see. Even some of the discs we used to see. I remember my first actual PC that ran off DOS decades ago, with their big 8.5-inch floppy disks, or 8-inch floppy disks, when they were actually truly floppy still before the 3.5-inch that most people remember as floppy disks. Commodore was developing the VIC-1 chip during the video game crash, and had trouble selling it, so then decided to use that chip to make an inexpensive home computer. In '81, Commodore wanted to create a chip that would pave the way for the next great video game. Is what they were looking for. They were thinking of arcades at the time, but decided to make it into a home PC, or console they were looking to do, and instead it later became the Commodore 64, which was, I think, my first gaming system. One of the Commodores was. I don't remember the 64, or might have been one of the Ataris, actually. As we moved through the years of PC development and home console stuff, we look into things like the Apple II GS. This paved the way with its first true 16-bit graphics in color, much improved sound quality. All these developments in home PCs, as far as getting the size smaller, getting better graphics, better sound quality, and the fact that what pushed the lines forward for development in almost every one of the home PC projects was getting the entire family to use it, especially children and children at heart. Obviously, they wanted to be able to play arcade quality games in the home setting. So you had dad who could do his office work, mom who could do whatever at that era, and then the kids who could do their gaming on it, all in one simple box. Basically, it was the true first kind of set-top box that we used to see. That's kind of where PCs started and kind of came through and revitalized some of the video game stuff with some of these chips that were designed for other things that got thrown into the first sets of home PCs or got converted into things like the Commodore 64. Moving on to Miyamoto. Any true gamer or gamer from the past knows the name Miyamoto, and holds that man in high regards in the video game industry. Shigeru Miyamoto is now the general manager for Nintendo. He started up as an artist for the company before he was asked to work on the development of games themselves. He was really good at his job as an artist, had a lot of kind of initiative behind him, and so he was asked to design a game. He started with Donkey Kong, but became most noteworthy, and this is where most people know his name from, is of course from The Legend of Zelda. He almost single-handedly saved the whole home video game console with his role in bringing the NES to the United States, and calling it the Nintendo Entertainment System, as opposed to Famicom, I think is what it was called before when it was in Japan. Famicom, Gamicom, something like that. I forget what it is now. But it included the launch titles such as Super Mario Brothers, which has become completely iconic in video game history. Without Miyamoto, there's a good chance we would never have seen the explosion of the quality of video games or hardware in the late 80s or even into the present as we celebrate last year's 25th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda. I remember there was a huge concert they did in the re-release of some of the original games, which is pretty neat. But I know when we're talking the pre-NES era, as the video game crash happened, it was because all these cheap carts were out there, video games that were not good quality but were just flooding the market. He was able to take some of these amazing games like Mario Brothers, Donkey Kong, and Zelda, and make good quality games that were worth the price of the cart at the time, and kind of save the whole system and the whole video game era and video game consoles at that time. Moving on to PlayStation. The original PlayStation by Sony helped revolutionize modern gaming by once again pushing the grounds of graphics and audio enhancements in the video game realm. With Nintendo and Sega, they were still playing around with 16-bit stuff with the Sega Genesis, even a little bit pre-Sega Saturn, Sega CD, and then you've got obviously the SNES, all running off 16 bits. Sony pushed ahead with its CD-based console instead of being cart-based, like all the systems of the current time. It dramatically improved 32-bit graphics and dual analog stick-based controls. That was the first time that everyone now as a gamer takes for granted when you pick up a game like a Call of Duty or a Borderlands or even a Skyrim, an Elder Scrolls, and you instantly grab the controller, put one thumb on each analog stick, and begin to look as well as you move. You didn't have that beforehand. And so the PlayStation was one of the first ones to roll in that dual analog stick to be able to control the camera. You had that first, or you see that on the Nintendo 64 a little bit. I remember with the C button to be able to control in Mario 64 the camera angles. And they were the first ones to get camera angles right, but Sony really took that and ran with it. But yeah, once again, it was the big 32-bit graphics, analog sticks, better audio, and they took a huge percentage of the console market as soon as they were available. It did have a rocky start due to production issues, but once they kind of got that worked out, they were amazingly sold amazingly well. Kind of a funny side fact that I didn't even know until I started researching for this stuff. That Nintendo was actually, or Sony actually came to Nintendo to have Nintendo license and make the PlayStation. But Nintendo said Sony wanted too much money for it, licensing agreements, things like that, and Nintendo said no. And now, years later, I'm sure they're kicking themselves because they would have been the ones making the PlayStation, and then the PlayStation 2, the PlayStation 3, all these new modern gaming consoles where they kind of fell behind. Now with the Wii, they did do a pretty good jump and were able to kind of get back with it as far as bringing in the family gamer and the social gamer as far as that kind of stuff. And the Wii U is kind of trying to get back into more of the core gamer, online capabilities, things like that. But just a neat thought that I never even knew that Nintendo actually came to Sony, or Sony actually came to Nintendo to make the PlayStation for them. But yeah, that's this week's assignment. Cool stuff. Once again, I like the digital format, so cool. Bye.